extremely well this evening, and I hope you're in the mood for some true crime. Now, I was scouring the internet in search of cases that have inspired horror movies, right? And then I stumbled upon the Amityville Horror case, and this case is so famous for all the horror movies that it inspired, right? Especially the haunting side of things. But I actually didn't know the full story behind it. So that is why I am going to tell you all about it tonight. This video is definitely going to be more true crime based rather than paranormal, but there's a little dash of paranormal at the end of it. Now, with that being said, and of course, as always, without any further ado, let's get into tonight's case, shall we? Alrighty, so the Amityville Horror case begins in the early 70s in America, more specifically in Amityville, which is an affluent part of Long Island in New York. Now there's this family, right? The DeFeo family, who owns a house in this part of Long Island, and this house is located on Ocean Avenue. Now the house that they owned was this really big, beautiful Dutch colonial house. It had a swimming pool and a nearby boat dock, and I kid you not, on the inside they had life-sized portraits, like actual paintings of the family on the walls inside the house. Like, that is wild. Life-size paintings in the 70s. I mean, that is some rich people. I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, the DeFeo family was quite large. It consisted of Ronald Sr. DeFeo, Louise DeFeo, his wife, and their 5 children: Ronald Jr., Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John. Now, I kind of want to describe their reputation in the community. So, apparently Ronald Sr. had helped a local girl out like a few times by giving her rides to her family's restaurant, which is nice of him. And the family had befriended another neighbour called Catherine O'Reilly after her husband had passed and she was lonely, which is also quite a nice thing to do. And maybe Catherine was just a really nice lady. But overall, the neighbours described them as a nice, normal family, and they seemed nice and loving people. But behind closed doors, the family was very different. Now, with a house like that, you would think that Ronald Sr. was making bank because Louise didn't work. Okay, so you'd think Ronald Sr. is like properly making bank if he can afford a house like that. But that was actually not true. So he managed a car dealership, and he actually didn't make enough money there to support the family's lavish lifestyle. So how do you solve that? I'll tell you, you get a rich father-in-law, because all the money actually came from Louise's dad, Michael Briganti. Now, he definitely seems to be swimming in it because he bought that massive house for them so that they can move out of their small Brooklyn apartment. And he also also gave Ronald Sr. about $50,000 to get those massive family portraits painted. I mean, thanks, Dad, right? But seriously, can you imagine having that much disposable income that you can give $50,000 to your son-in-law to get massive paintings made? Like, that baffles me. Now, of all the wealth that Ronald Sr., aka Big Ronnie, that's his nickname, was showing off, he had hardly earned anything himself. So, Big Ronnie wasn't this really nice guy who, drives neighborhood girls around to help them out all the time. He was actually, reportedly, a very abusive and violent man. So, Ronald Jr., the oldest son, was most often the target of Ronald Sr.'s frustrations and his violence. That's not to say that the other kids didn't get any of it, but most of the time it was aimed towards Ronald Jr. Now, Ronald Jr. had a nickname of his own, though not as awe-inspiring as his dad. Big Ronnie. Ronald Jr. went by Butch, and you kinda gotta keep that in mind a bit, stick a pin in it, because I'm gonna refer to Ronald Jr. a lot as Butch, mainly because I get confused with the senior and junior thing. So now, Butch was not only the target of his dad's abuse and his violence, which is already in and of itself, kind of sad, but he was also bullied in school to top it all off, and it was mainly because he was, a little chunky boy. The kids would call him names like Pork Chop and the Blob, which, kids can be cruel, right? And being bullied is never a fun experience, but, we don't all turn into what Ronald Jr. turned into. So, now, by the time he was a teenager, he had lost most of this extra weight, right? So he wasn't a little chunky boy anymore, but he had lost it because he developed an alcohol and amphetamine addiction as a coping mechanism, which not the healthiest way to lose weight. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that. Now, as the years went on, this addiction only got worse, and Butch kind of got more aggressive as time went on. Like, he got into fights a lot with strangers, but also with his friends. Like, there's even been instances where he's pointed guns at people, which it's just no, it's a lot, is what it is, right? So it's safe to say that Butch wasn't a very pleasant person, like, in general. Now, apparently the fight with his dad was so bad, and they escalated, and he once also pulled a gun on his dad, which again, is a bit much, right? Now, although he got abuse from his dad, Big Ronnie did give Butch a job at the car dealership that he managed, which is nice. I mean, it's a nice thing to do, but Butch kind of took advantage of it because he rarely showed up, and when he did, he left early. So again, he took complete advantage of the fact that his dad had given him this job and he wasn't going to get sacked anyway, and he even admitted to this later on. So basically most of Butch's time was spent doing drugs and drinking and arguing with his parents. wondering. So, on November 13th, 1974, a Wednesday, Robert Jr. went into his parents' bedroom while they were asleep. Now, it wasn't to ask them if he could sleep with them because he was scared of the monsters. No, he pulled out a .35 caliber Marlin rifle. I'm having to read this because I don't know about guns. I don't know anything about them. I don't know what that looks like. But he pulled it, and he shot his father twice while he slept, which killed him. Now he then turned the gun on his mum, and he did the exact same thing to her. Now, I mean, I'm not gonna go into the nitty-gritty of how exactly they died. I mean, they got shot, but it wasn't a very quick one, and I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it because it's quite gruesome. Now, even though his beef was clearly with his dad and had been all his life, and he had already killed his mum as well at this point, he decided that he wasn't done yet. So he then went into the bedrooms of his siblings and one by one killed them. 18-year-old Dawn, 13-year-old Alison, 12-year-old Mark, and 9-year-old John Matthew, each with a single fatal shot from that same weapon, which is just horrendous. It's just horrendous. Anyways, as one does, after murdering one's family in cold blood, Butch then went ahead and took a nice, steamy shower. He then got dressed and he collected all the incriminating evidence that he could find, and he decided to actually go to work that day for a change, right? I mean, that's not suspicious. I mean, come on. Now, on his way there, he actually dumped all the evidence in a storm drain and then went about his day again, as one does. Now, depending on the source that you read, the murder weapon was either dumped in the storm drain with all the rest of the evidence, or for some reason he had left that one and he hid it in a box in the house. But like I say, there's just conflicting information on different sources, so I don't know which one is correct. But just remember, it's either in a storm drain or it's in his house. But then again, like, I'm more inclined to believe that if he did actually go through the trouble of collecting evidence and dumping it, that he would have also dumped the weapon. Like, it would be a bit stupid not to. But then again, this is Ronald Jr. DeFeo, so, you know, who knows what answering the phone, and he couldn't in fact get in touch with them. So yeah, he had apparently a really fun afternoon with the pals, and then he decided it was time to prepare himself for the moment supreme, which was the discovery of the bodies, right? So at around 6 p.m, Butch was at a bar close to his home with some of those friends. I don't know, I'm assuming that it was the same friends that he had hung out with like all afternoon. But at this point he was still complaining to them about the fact that he couldn't get in touch with his family, and he even phoned again. I mean, talk about overkill. He even phoned again in front of his friends and also other people in the bar. Now he then said, enough is enough. I'm at this bar, it's not far from my house. I'm actually gonna walk back and I'm gonna try and break into the house to see what's going on. I mean, is using your house key too mainstream now? Like, why did he need to break into his own house? Like, you're not going to tell me that a 23-year-old with his own job doesn't have a house key to his own house. Anyways, maybe he forgot it. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But he wanted to go back there and he wanted to break a window and crawl in. I don't know either. Now, about 30 minutes later, he came running back into that bar, screaming his head off, right? Screaming for help. He started begging the people in there, like mostly his friends, to come to his house with him because someone had shot his family. Now his friends came running and followed him all the way back to his house, which wasn't far. Now when they got there, they were obviously greeted by a very horrific scene. Now all the members of the DeFeo family were found fatally shot and laying face down on their beds. Now again, I'm going to spare you the details of what it looked like. There are crime scene photos out there. I wouldn't recommend looking them up because I know crime scene photos can kind of haunt you. So don't do it if you don't have to. I'm gonna leave the gruesome details out of it. Sadly, some of the family members didn't die immediately. They bled out. It's just not pretty, and I'm not gonna describe it in detail. Now, one of Ronald's friends, apparently a guy with common sense, immediately phoned the police when he saw this, which, well done. So the police came, and they arrived, and they were met by a very, very, very distraught Robert Jr., who instantly went on to tell them that he thought his family had been targeted by the mob. Okay. Now, the cops, believe it or not, actually kind of bought into this story at first, and they even took him to the police station for his protection. Lol. Now, while he was there, it's lucky they did, because while he was there, he obviously got questioned, and soon his whole narrative, his whole story started to crumble. Police discovered several details that just didn't line up. Now, this is where the story gets a little bit confusing, because our friend Butch has a wild imagination, okay? So, Robert, first of all, maintained that he had been at work all morning and then with his friends all afternoon, which was true, but he said that therefore he couldn't have killed his family. Now, police determined also claimed that this hitman had a key to their house. So, let me get this straight, please. Let me get this straight. So Butch himself, the son, the eldest son, did not have a house key, but some random mafia hitman did. Make it make sense. Okay, make it make sense. But he said that to the police, that the hitman has a key to their house. And it gets better. He buried a box of money and jewels in the house. Like a pirate. What? Now he kept telling the police to look for this box. And he said that if they found the box and it was empty, or if they didn't find the box at all, that was evidence that the hitman had been there and had emptied his box or had taken it. And of course the police didn't find this box, but that's because the box is imaginary. It's not because the pirate came back for his treasure, okay? Now, you're probably wondering, why would a mafia hitman be targeting this family that has been nice to him? I mean, they've given him a place to stay in Brooklyn when his house burned down, which is a nice thing. They've given him a key to their house so he could bury his treasure there. Nice thing, right? But apparently Butch had had an argument with this guy at the car dealership because of a lousy paint job that he had done, and Mr. Hitman had criticized him for it. And if there is one thing that Butch doesn't like, it's to be criticized, right? So when Mr. Hitman criticized him, Butch lost it, and he grabbed a paintbrush and he threw it at the guy, but it missed him because, Butch was an alcoholic, so he didn't have great aim, and it hit a window behind the hitman and it shattered it. And then Butch called him a C word. Now, Butch's dad, Big Ronnie, he wasn't too pleased with what his son had done, and he said, that guy is a notorious mafia hitman. You have no idea what you've done, and now I'm gonna have to watch out for Ma and the kids because of what you've done. You've made him angry, right? Now, I know that this is all a bit confusing, but anyways, Ronald Jr. is trying to convince the police that this hitman actually committed the murders and not him, okay? The police did look into this guy and they found out that he was actually out of state at the time. So, too bad. Butchie boy, I mean. Now, the police then found the weapon, and again, depending on the source, they either found it in the storm drain or in the DeFeo house. And they learned that a couple weeks before the murders, Butch was looking to purchase a silencer, which he also apparently didn't do, but he was looking for one, okay? Now, if they hadn't been before, all eyes were now on Butch, right? Now, obviously, Butch then was questioned further, and during questioning, the police noted that his attitude towards his family members was not that of a grieving son or a grieving brother, right? Because he literally had nothing nice to say about any of his family members. I know we all grieve differently, and you have to have respect for different types of grieving, but this guy was just plain rude, mean, disgusting and vile, okay, when speaking about his family members. You want to hear this? So he said that the night before he didn't have dinner police confronted him with the evidence, which was the murder weapon and the time of death of the family members, his story suddenly changed. I know, weird, right? Very strange. So it was still the hitman who did it, according to him, but Butch had been forced by this hitman to watch and to also get his hands dirty by killing one family member. Now, as he was saying this, Butch kind of put his head in his hands and he said, give me a minute. And then eventually he admitted that what he just said didn't happen and that he committed the murders and that the hitman was never there. I mean, what a big surprise. What a big surprise. Now his trial took place almost a year later, in October of 1975. Obviously, his attorney was gonna mount an insanity defense, right? Because what can you say? I mean, with cases like this, it's always gonna be an insanity defense. Now, he said that Ronald Jr. was hearing voices that told him his family was plotting against him, which he might well have been. If you're on that much drugs and alcohol, he might well have been hearing those voices. Still no reason to kill, massacre your entire family, right? Now, he also claimed, the attorney, that Ronald was possessed. Now, you gotta remember that this was the 70s, so it was in the middle of the satanic panic, right? So that was actually seriously part of his defense. And this one's a funny one. At one point during the trial, Butch was shown a picture of his own mother, and he said that he didn't know who she was. Oh my god. Now, the psychiatrist on the prosecution side, so obviously they've got to have one as well to just counterclaim what the other psychiatrist is saying. So he argued that although Butch used a lot of drugs, he had put in an effort to get rid of the evidence and secure an alibi for himself. So he was completely aware of his actions at the time of the crime, which he's got a point. I mean, now Ronald Jr. DeFeo was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 6 sentences of 25 years to life in prison. He obviously didn't agree with this, so he filed many appeals and requests to the parole board, which were all denied, luckily. Now, over the years, while he was in prison, he still kept changing his story so many times, let it go, Ronald, let it go, it's over, it's done, you're locked up, game over. But no, he kept changing his story, and some versions of it were more outrageous than others. So, for example, in one of the versions of his story, Louise, his mum, was actually the killer, but he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to upset his grandpa. Louise, who was found face down on her bed next to her husband, shot to death. She was the killer. Okay, Butch, okay. Now, another version his sister Dawn did it, right? So he claims that he told his sister Dawn on the night of the murders that if she wanted to kill their parents, to just go ahead and do it. He actually gave her the weapon and he told her that it was all ready to go, she just needed to pull the trigger. Now according to him, Dawn then immediately took this rifle, went to the parents' bedroom and shot them. Now, Butch couldn't deal with that. Obviously he was like, oh my god, no, you were actually doing this. So he left. And then he decided to come back after a while because it was like, you know, my bed is there and I kind of need to sleep. So he came back and then he found his other siblings on their bed and Dawn had killed them. And then when he came in, she pointed the gun at him, and that is when he allegedly killed Dawn in self-defense. So that was one of the versions of his story, but as outrageous as this sounds, the weird thing is that there is actually some evidence to back it up. You didn't expect me to say that, right? But there is actually some forensic evidence that backs this up slightly. So, according to this forensic evidence, Dawn had some unburned gunpowder on her nightgown, which may indicate that she could have fired a weapon. Again, I don't know much about guns. I don't know in what other instances that can happen, but unburned gunpowder can indicate that that is a person who fired the weapon. Okay. Now, through the years, it's also been questioned how 6 people, right, 6, could have been killed in the house, face down in their beds, without putting up a fight. Like, the gunshots didn't wake them up. And why did nobody else, like not even the neighbors, hear the gunshots? Butch didn't use a silencer even though he was planning to purchase one. He didn't use one, and no drugs were found in any of the family members' systems. So how did he pull that off? Now, these are secrets that Butch took to his grave as he passed away in prison on March 21st, 2021. So not that long ago, and he was 69 at the time. Now, till his dying day, he kept saying that he didn't understand why people didn't believe his stories. Gee, I wonder why, Butch. I mean, they can't all be true, and you've told at least a dozen stories already, so I wonder why people don't believe you. Now, to end this episode, I've got like a little paranormal bit for you. I know you like that. So, the house was bought in December of 1975, so after Ronald Jr.'s trial, and it was bought by George Lutz and his wife Kathy, and they moved there with their 3 children for a grand total of 28 days. 28 days they lived in the house, and then after 28 days they bolted out of there, claiming the house was haunted by the spirits of the DeFeo family. They reported various paranormal occurrences, like green slime oozing from the walls, which sounds like a health hazard, I'm not gonna lie. They also reported windows like opening and closing on their own and even suddenly shattering. And they also reported family members levitating in bed, which I think they kind of got from a horror film, but I don't know. Who am I to say that? Like, I wasn't there. But you need to know this next bit. So, firstly, the haunting that the Lutz family experienced will always find a way to take advantage, right? Now, this has never been proven to my knowledge, but I mean, I don't find it very hard to believe that somebody would exaggerate things or fake things or purposefully make things happen to get financial gain, right? To get a little bit of cash or a whole lot of cash. I mean, obviously, he already had quite a bit of cash if he could buy that massive house with the swimming pool and the boat dock. So why, George? Like, why? Don't be greedy. Anyways, that was the story of the Amityville Horror. I really enjoyed researching this case. I can't believe I didn't actually know it. I hope you enjoyed learning about it, listening to it. Thank you guys so much, as always, for choosing to hang out with me again tonight. And I hope I will see you again for next week's video. For now, though, all there is left for me to do is to wish you a very, 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 very good night. Good night. Sleep well, sleep well, sleep well, sleep well. Let's do some tapping just to end the episode. Some sticky